Welcome, everyone. Hi, I'm Diane Sharp. I'm the Director of Admissions for the Wharton MBA Program for Executives based in Philadelphia, and I'm joined by my counterpart, Barb Kraft, who's based in San Francisco. Tonight, we're going to share with you the WEMBA Career Programming Preview. Leading tonight's presentation is Steve Hernandez, who is the Director of Career Advancement for the MBA Program for Executives, and Steve is based in San Francisco. Also joining us is Karina Myers. Karina is the Program Manager for the Career Advancement Support Team, and she's based in Philadelphia. And behind the scenes is Taylor Hotsko. Taylor is an admissions advisor on the admissions team with Barb and me. So all of us are going to be here for you as you listen to Steve and Karina in their presentation. Please feel free to post your questions along the way in the chat portal.
Thanks everyone for showing up, making time this evening, and considering the Wharton MBA for Executives program. I'm Steve Hernandez, the Director of WEMBA Career Advancement in San Francisco. I support the 200 resident executive MBA students based here in San Francisco. Joining us tonight is also my colleague Karina Myers, who's based in Philadelphia. And what I'm going to do this evening is just sort of give you a general overview of our strategy and methodology to deliver career services. And this will give you an opportunity to kind of observe that and ask questions. So if you have a question, feel free to ask that question anytime through chat. We'll be monitoring the chat, and my colleagues will stop me and ask the chat question. I'll also allot time at the end of the slides to take some more general questions. So now is your opportunity to learn a little bit more about how we deliver career programming for the WEMBA program. So without further ado, I'll get started. So what I'm going to cover is the mission of WEMBA Career Advancement and kind of highlight how that's different than traditional full-time MBA. I'll talk a little bit about our online services. I'll talk a little bit about our programming flow and system and process, and I'll talk a little bit about keys to success. I'll describe a little bit about students that have had success using this support, and that'll give you a sense of some context. And then of course we'll take some questions and talk about our partnership, potential partnership. So what is the mission of WEMBA Career Advancement, specific the Wharton MBA for Executives program? Ideally, we're here to help students assess and identify a career path. Think of their career as more of an arc. What's the narrative? What is the story? What is the long-term plan to get me where I want to go, and what that's going to entail? So we think of it more as a novel versus a transaction. And more as a work in progress and a continuous work in progress over the overall arc of your career. And so this is a great opportunity for those of you that have been sort of reactive to jobs and haven't put a lot of strategy into your choices. We urge our students to take advantage of this opportunity to start doing that. So we support advancement, so promotions, getting to the next level. A lot of our students are already in senior management looking to get to that C level, or we have students in middle management looking to get to that director or VP level. And certainly we're set up to support that. Also, we're here to help you with exploration. Maybe you're looking at, you're not sure what you want to do next, or you're taking this opportunity to look at new industries and new career functions. We're here for you as well in that regard as well. And of course, transition. A good portion of our students are in a sort of transition, whether it's a pivot, whether it's changing a career function, whether it's changing industries, whether it's potentially changing companies. We look at all that, whether it's starting a company, entrepreneurship. And like I said earlier, our goal is to create a long-term career strategy and theme. So could that mean a short-term change? Yes. But what does that short-term change mean? What are the implications of that change for your longer-term career trajectory? So we really want to think big picture here. Building a brand and building a network is vital to career success. So For those that have not done that in the past, this is the opportunity to dig into that, and you constantly hear that here at WEMBA, the importance of your network and the importance of your professional brand, and we're here to help you do that, to establish that. Help you devise a career plan. So at Wharton, it's all about strategy, and so it's no different in managing your career. So we help you build a strategy and then execute that strategy into an action plan. It's all about managing your career over a lifetime, not transactional. So how do we do it? We do it through continuous one-on-one, unlimited one-on-one coaching. So we have a coach here in San Francisco and a coach in Philadelphia that supports our Philadelphia students. And you have unlimited access to your coach. We have resources available 24/7 that I'm going to highlight tonight. Series of workshops and presentations that you'll have exposure to during your 2 years at WEMBA. Career panels, continuous alumni panels. In fact, we have one coming up tomorrow night. Speakers, company visits. So we have an array of activities that you'll be able to take advantage of. And access to our very robust and influential alumni network. And then one thing that I've always found very effective is small group programs. So we have a program called the JSAG Job Search Action Groups, various working groups that we sort of put together ad hoc depending on areas of interest, mock interview sessions. I do, LinkedIn makeovers, resume working sessions. So I'm a big believer in small group work, with a where there's common interest to bring students together to work in small groups. So that's just a highlight. Let me know if there's any chat questions that come through. And then, of course, major events. So we do have a major event called Career Conversations that happens in the first year, and that's where we match students up with alumni representing their core areas of interest. We have partnered with our full-time team to put together a Startup Expo in the past. We do have on-campus recruiting that our WEMBA students have access to in the second year. And then, throughout, there's various events that occur. One thing I'll get into in a few minutes is our career day events, which are, we have one in the first year and then one in the second year, and that's a full day of career programming that we put together. We just came back to doing that live. So we're looking forward to, continuing to do that. So a lot of, so mixed into all of these sort of as needed programs and speakers and workshops, we have some major events that students can look forward to during their 2 years here.
Steve, we actually have a question related to what you just brought up regarding the going back to in-person and so forth. So how did the whole virtual and pandemic situation impact what you do, and how do you see that moving forward? Will it go back to 100% to the way it was, or what's going to happen?
Well, whether it's a work in progress, I'll say. We are back, as you can speak to this. Actually, Diane, we are back in the classroom. So that we are happy to announce that we are back in the classroom. We are still hybrid for students that don't feel comfortable coming back to the classroom, but for anyone who wants to be back in the classroom, we are there. As far as career programming is concerned, we did our career day event where we had a full 8 hours of workshops. We did it live in Philadelphia. We actually were able to do many of the workshops live. The only reason we weren't able to do live is more from weather. Wasn't COVID, it was weather that impacted some of those workshops. But so yes, our goal is to try to get as many of the live workshops as possible. Where we are not back 100% is on panels, speakers, and visits. Though some speakers have come to campus, most of our workshops and panels are still virtual because we're still, working through some of the challenges of space and getting outside people here more regularly. But we anticipate, in the coming months, getting back to that. That's the goal. But again, a lot depends on what's happening in the environment. So short answer is the goal is to come back full, 100% live. But I also think there's some value in terms of delivery and quantity of delivery to mix virtual. And so for things that are appropriate to be done virtually, we actually had a Wednesday night webinar series before the pandemic. And so we did have a series that went on Wednesday night webinars. So that, that just expanded during the pandemic. So there are certain things that make sense to continue to keep virtual, if it's depending on the subject matter. So we'll just be strategic about what we do. Thanks for the question. Okay, I'm going to talk about some of our online resources, and so these are available 24/7 online. One is our career website. So we have a dedicated WEMBA MBA for Executives career website, so it's not attached to the full-time website, and it's built with resources that are specific to the needs of our students. And so there we have assessments available: the career leader assessment, StrengthsFinder assessment, the CAP workbook, which is the career. It's basically a series of career assessments that we've kind of consolidated into a singular workbook. And of course, it's not on here, but a lot of the traditional assessments, such as the Myers-Briggs, is available as well. We have Beyond B School, which is a series of short videos recorded by some of the top career coaches in the marketplace on some very popular subject matter, from the LinkedIn strategy, interviewing strategy, resume strategy. So these are, if you just jumped on there, it's 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and you wanted to look at a, look at a resume, build your resume, or you wanted to prep for an interview, you could pop on there, and there's some quick videos that you can have access to, along with, of course, scheduling coaching sessions, articles, presentations, salary info, industry research, company research, just an array of resources that you can hit at any time at your convenience. So that's our career website. We also have what is called Career Path, which is the platform by which one applies for jobs. It's, you'll use that for on-campus recruiting if you choose to participate in on-campus recruiting. It's also a great tool to do company research. We have a lot of company contacts. So all the companies that post a job or participate in structured recruiting events put profiles in this platform, and you have access to that. So our more ambitious students will take advantage of that. And of course, we'll coach you on how to interact with these folks. But it's a great tool. And finally, we have 2 alumni networking platforms, one called Wharton Alumni Career Chats, WAC, and Karina Myers is our de facto administrator for that. So Karina, you're in good hands in terms of the management of that platform. But it's a great platform in that what it does is it's kind of like a Match.com for career. And what it does is it takes students who have you fill out a profile and list your unique interests, and and then what we'll do is it'll match you up with an alum that's in there saying, I have expertise in these interests and willing to talk to people about these areas. The system will match you up, and then you will go ahead and reach out to these alum and schedule meetings. So it's basically a structured platform to bring you together. We also have the My Pen directory, which is the broader alumni directory, and it's huge. It enables you to look at profiles of global alumni, and also there's also a mechanism in there where alumni will put down ways to contact them, and so it's something you can cross-reference with LinkedIn. And so anyway, between the two, you have great access, pretty substantial access to our alumni population. All right, great. So let me talk about the flow of our programming a little bit and how you want to go with that flow. We tackle all 4 of these major areas, and I think I mentioned it earlier, but for example, starting point, whether it's, I'm an entrepreneur and I want to start a new venture, what does that look like? So for entrepreneurs and those of you that are interested in starting ventures, your partnership with career is not tactical. So I'm not here, nor is my colleague in Philadelphia. We have the background to tactically help you build a venture and scale a venture. That's not our expertise. Our role on the career side is to more assess whether this makes sense for you right now. Is this the appropriate path for you based on what you bring to the table, based on your interests, based on your long-term career goals, based on those other variables? And if it turns out that entrepreneurship is for you, we have an entrepreneurship team. I listed that person here. And so we have Penn Wharton Entrepreneurship that is there to help you more tactically. So our role, again, is more assessment of whether entrepreneurship makes sense for you and why. And then if it does make sense for you, to help expose you to the right resources within Wharton to help you go to the next level with that venture. So that's our role there. In terms of promotion and advancement, obviously one-on-one career coaching, again, going through that assessment process, given your long-term career goals, what does that next move look like in your organization? How do you build an internal core brand strategy, build that network to get to those roles? We also, along the way, have an executive coaching program that kicks in the second year where you do a 360 and you work with your executive coach. So again, depending on what that goal is within your organization, I would help you, your career director would help you devise a plan to enable you. And then you have tactical support from an executive coach that works on you, your delivery. How do you manage meetings? How do you manage up? How are you managing your team? How effective you are there? And then if you were able to, get that promotion, or you're trying to negotiate an offer, or a raise, what have you, we're here to help tactically get you there. In terms of switching, and that represents a substantial part of our population here, whether that switches industry, function, the 180 double switch, I want to do both. Again, starts with the one-on-one coaching, identifying what that switch looks like and why, what is the viability of that switch, what do you bring to the table in that switch, what skills do you have that transfer, that translate and transfer, what skills gaps do you have, how can you build those skills, and then again, how do you build a network to get there? How do you build a job search around that? And that could happen on an individual job search basis. You can join the job search action groups. How do you connect to the network that represents that new target? How do you, what events make sense for you to attend to help get you there? So switching is a big part of what we do. And it's also okay not to be sure. I'm not sure. And that's great. This is a great opportunity to explore some areas that maybe you never thought of before. And that certainly happens with a lot of our students. They'll take a marketing course. They never thought they were interested in marketing. They'll take a strategy course, and now they understand what strategy actually looks like and how they might apply that to their current role, or how they might do that in other areas of their organization. So if you're not sure, that's fine. We'll explore that. The key takeaway is our goal is not necessarily to ensure that you have a new job during the program or at the end of the program. It's to ensure that you have a plan, a strategy, and you kind of know where you're going. That's what we hope to do. I'll stop here for a second in case there's any chat questions that came in. Okay, I'll move on.
Steve, there is actually one related to that. What you kind of were alluding to, as far as somebody making a significant change in direction of their career, is that, how viable is that, and how robust are the services if you're making a pivot? And
yeah.
The example this person uses, even from just going from a small business to, say, a large multinational enterprise.
Yeah, and we're gonna have a slide on that. Short answer is yes, we're here to help you do that. A portion of our students do make that 180 switch, where I'm changing job, function, industry. So yes, it's a lot of work. It's not easy by any means. I'll go over the nuances for that in a second. But yeah, yes, we're here to help support that. It does happen. It's a lot of front-end exploration, discovery, and analysis, combined with a comprehensive strategy, combined with very aggressively building a new brand in that new network. Not everyone, frankly, is able to pull that off. It's not an easy task, but there are people that do pull it off. What I do find more often than not, though, is on your way to achieving that 180, you may take a short-term pivot, which represents the bulk of the career transition that occurs here. So what does that mean? That means instead of doing both the industry change and the job function change, maybe I do one at a time. So if I'm a product manager, let's say, maybe I go from hardware to software product, or potentially I'm in the semiconductor industry. I'm able to pivot, keep my same job function and pivot into going from, say, semiconductors into enterprise software, something like that, as a first step, and then that opens the door for later steps. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit more deeply in a second. Thank you for the question. So this is just a little graph on indicates on how a lot of our students make changes within the time they're here. This doesn't necessarily represent how they change after they graduate, but amongst the students that make the changes while they're here, roughly about 35% of those changes happen from the enterprise standpoint. So what that is just as an individual. So it's that maybe one-on-one coaching support they get from the career team, building their own network, that individual journey. And really that is much more the EMBA experience versus a lot of the full-time experience. And I'm not saying the full-time people don't do it as individuals, but they're more involved with, say, clubs and different groups, and they kind of jump into internships and on-campus recruiting and things like that, where they kind of jump into a big group of people that are pursuing similar interests. Our students, because they're experienced, because they have, they're more further along in their life, there's usually more unique circumstances going on. So it's more of a tailored approach. So most students find they embark on their career journey as an individual, but certainly get the support from their class, get the support from their coach, get the support from their network. But it's more of an individual journey. Another 32% will do. I sort of developed these job search action groups about 8 years ago to kind of provide some sort of a synergistic approach. And so these are teams. So in the second year, students that are interested in joining the job search, we have these programs where you work in small teams to achieve your career move, your goal, and sort of work with kind of leverage a group environment and group support, and with more structure and accountability around your job search. These are 8-week programs, and these are 8-week intensive programs that try to get you as close to achieving your job search goal as possible. And I have switchers there because I find that the switchers benefit the most from that kind of team support. So they don't feel like they're kind of going it alone, because there are a lot of variables going on with career switching. So about 32% of the students make their change from working in the job search teams. And then about 3% will do traditional on-campus, will make a job change from traditional on-campus recruiting along with the full-time students. So these are people that might get into consulting and things like that. But as you see, it's a small portion of our students, and I can certainly answer any questions around why that is. But it's not optimal. It's not an optimal process for a lot of experienced hire folks. And of course, there's other variables at play. And then about 30% of our students, may not make a change while they're here. They may be looking to make a change post-graduation. And it doesn't mean they don't do any career work. That means, and I think I would encourage everyone to at least try to work while they're here to build that strategy, think about what they want to do long-term. But a lot of students don't execute on it until after they graduate. Maybe they don't want to, maybe they don't have the bandwidth and time, maybe they have other priorities, maybe they're building their business. And they might make those changes post-graduation. But this is sort of a breakdown on the change activity that occurs. And just grab me if there's any other questions, Diane. This goes to answer that question that came up earlier. So this is a little model that I created that talks about the difficulty in change. And if you look at quadrant 1, there's a version of this in Dawn's book, Switchers, that I'll talk about in a second. If you look at quadrant 1, I mean, nothing is easy, but more that vertical change, traditional growth, that means, director, VP, in the same career, same career function, in the same relative space in industry, and I'm kind of moving up. And effectively, that's what executive MBAs were all about. It was to help people already on a trajectory get their MBA part-time and kind of get to that next level. So that represents, a big portion of the change that occurs with our students that kind of adhere to that more traditional mobility. But then we also now, in the last decade or so, we've seen more students that want to make a broader switch. And so then I'd say quadrant number 2, the next one is maybe that function. So maybe I want to go from engineer to product manager. I want to go from sales into strategy. I maybe want to go from finance into a marketing or something else. And so that functional shift sort of represents the next level of challenge, though many students will do it. It does happen, but it can be challenging. And then, of course, I would say the next level of challenge might be the industry. And why is that? Because I think a lot of folks are coming here with 10 years plus experience, at least 8 years, so you kind of know your space. So unless you've already made some industry shifts already, so let's say you spent 8 years in pharma, but I want to get out of pharma, tough to kind of break through that. I mean, you built 8 years and stuff. So that change may be something relative. Maybe it's digital health you move into it, so maybe another area of healthcare that you make the move. But kind of hard to make a more radical switch of industry when you've been in it a long time. But again, it can be done, but one has to just recognize the opportunity costs of doing such a thing. And then finally, the most difficult switch is that 180 switch. Like, I want to do something completely different. I don't want to be an engineer anymore, and I don't want to do it in this industry. So that represents a more radical shift. And so, a lot of people sort of migrate to, say, consulting as that catalyst or something like that. And that's possible, but again, difficult with a lot of the experience levels of our EMBA students. So, but they end up doing more often than not is taking that pivot. But like I said earlier, like you saw on the slide prior, a good 3% annually will make that 180. And a lot of that is built off of hard work, building a strong network, redoing your brand, and being very strategic about what choices you make. So it does happen. But overall, there's different ways to execute your career mobility. Okay. All right, so our career process breaks into 3 major phases, I should say. The discovery phase is we start out with. The design phase is sort of your next middle phase of your 2 years, and then the implementation phase is toward the end. So we had to break it down. Discovery would be more terms 1 and 2, design terms 3 and 4, implementation terms 5 and 6. Now, granted, you can be on your own individual schedule. That's what's great about WEMBA, but the programming will be in sync with these phases. So some of the tools during the discovery phases, I highlighted them. Your assessment tools that we get you going on, your discovery worksheets, your archetype worksheets that we've created. So as you're out there networking, you're collecting data. You're collecting data on what people do, how they do it, what their backgrounds look like, how does that apply to you, what skills do you bring to the table, what gaps do you have. We try to help you collect that data. Coursework tracker, how do you apply your coursework? Where does that apply to some of your career targets? And then results and fit scoring. So I can work with you through a lot of that material, helping you through that discovery phase. Design phase. Now we start getting into designing a new brand. So workshops, worksheets, your pitch development. What's my connecting and networking strategy? So workbooks along those lines. I'll talk about my book in just a second. Career transition strategy, the Switchers book that we work from, and that's a book that Dawn Graham wrote, and she's our former career director in Philadelphia. She's moved on, but I think her book is still a wonderful resource in the early stages of discovery and switching. LinkedIn strategy, resume strategy, and the Job Search Manifesto is a book that I co-wrote that creates a process flow and a system for your implementation in your job search. And then going to implementation phase, the job search action groups, the career function groups that we put together, targeting and sourcing strategy, branding, networking for job search, advanced interviewing, offer negotiation, and of course the job search manifesto. So the point I'm trying to make here is for each phase, we have tools, resources, workshops that coalesce with that phase. So, if you look at it, it's threefold. It's the coaching that guides you, resources, tools, workshops to help solidify things, and then your individual activity that drives it home. So you think of it in threes. So this is just a real quick recap of during the discovery phase. We have activities that go along with it. The Designing Your Life workshop is something we do that's really cool in the first year. The Career Day event that I told you about, where we'll do career mapping and strategy, networking, branding, career transition workshops, LinkedIn workshops, executive speakers. So we'll have an array of programs along with the one-on-one coaching and the tools you use to kind of get you started in that journey. And so I kind of list some of these things here. Same thing for design phase. So now we're moving to design, and now we start getting more advanced. Let's start building out your more advanced resume. Let's build out that LinkedIn profile. Let's start mock interviewing you. Let's start, getting you ready for a prime time. Your executive coach is back there to sort of work on your development, your personal growth development. Again, group sessions that we can connect you with, that where you're working with students of like interest to support you. Company visits, company coffee chats with our alumni, and then programs, if you see in the center here, networking, alumni events, resume book, things like that we put together. Case interviewing practice for consulting. And then finally, implementation phase. This is where we kick in the job search action groups. You might want to do on-campus recruiting if you prefer. We'll have company visits. Again, our alumni will regularly come in and kind of talk and do these virtual events, potentially live events when we get back to live. And of course, throughout all of this, you're always going to be doing one-on-one coaching. So hopefully the point's coming across that throughout your 2 years here, there's an array of programs that you can participate in. You always have a one-on-one coach available to you. And all you have to do is look at the calendar, and there's always something interesting going on.
Steve, we do have a question regarding that. Someone is saying, wow, this is an amazing amount of programming that's happening. Is it all done outside of the classroom, or is any of it integrated within the coursework itself?
No, it's not integrated. This is all co-curricular. So that's a great question, because how do we do it? And so this is why there's some value to having some online, some virtual work. But generally, we try to do as much as we can during the class weekends. There's before class time, there's lunchtime, there's after class sometimes. We have those career day events where we do, I guess to answer that point, that might be the closest thing we have to matching what's classroom with career, in that we have these dedicated 8-hour days where we actually do career curriculum to get you started. But then the panels, the company visits, we try to bring people live when we can, have lunchtime speakers, morning coffee chats, or virtual when we can fit it in. But one has to recognize that your priority here is your coursework. Your priority here is to get your degree from Wharton. So I have been accused of being a little bit too busy with the activities. And the way I look at it, though, is, realistically, you're not going to be able to do everything. We try to record as much of the career material as we can so you can review it later. But I like the options for students. So if the stars align, I have the time and to do it, I want things to be available to students. And if you miss out on one thing, chances are there'll be something you can do later on. But I'm a big believer in having options for our students.
And Steve, can I just add really quick for the opportunity to have, we obviously did more virtual programming over this last year and a half with COVID, but it also, I think, really helps in terms of the flexibility and the variety of alumni we're able to have participate in our programs. Because if they were all just solely on campus, then you might not have as much of a wealth of representation from like some of our alumni who are doing amazing things, but might be, for Philadelphia students, might be on the San Francisco coast, and then vice versa, or in the middle of the country, or globally. So I think that's something else that we've kind of identified over the last year and a half or so, that having virtual opportunities really kind of helps bring in a variety of alumni as well to help with our students.
That's a wonderful point, Karina. I think it's also helped you and our students our bi-coastal connections happen more and expose each coast to opportunities on the other coast. So I think that's been a wonderful thing. So these are the two publications books I talked to you about. So Don Graham's book on switchers is a tool we use in the early stages of, especially for those of you switching. But I think even if you're not switching, there's a lot of great stuff in there about discovery and researching careers and understanding your audience and building that new brand and targeting. So I will still, we will still recommend that book, though Don has moved on. It's still a wonderful resource that we'll be working with. And then the Job Search Manifesto I co-wrote with Mike Minosky, who is a coach that I do bring in part-time to help out in second year on the job search teams. And this is a book that we work with to help our students once they have locked into their targets and have gone through that foundational work and they know they've built that new brand and they're ready to go and they're ready to implement a job search. This book, hopefully the structure and the strategy in here will get you across the finish line. That's the goal. So you have that support. This is sort of that Ascent Pyramid, what we try to work with. Again, hopefully you're gathering that we do have a method and we do have structure and we do have a game plan for you. It's not random. So we start at the bottom with discovery, targeting, building a brand, building relationships as a foundation. I find that if you skip these steps and you're jumping from, hey, I walk in the door and hey, I want to talk about writing a resume and applying for a job and negotiating, and you miss all the stuff in between, you just don't have as much success. But students that build this foundation and then go from that relationship to now sourcing opportunities, building a great LinkedIn presence and brand in the marketplace, have a resume that coalesces with that, then they move into then they're much more effective on the execution stage of attaining interviews. And once I attain those interviews, I can perform on those interviews. And then hopefully we get you to that final goal of negotiating and helping you negotiate the best offer possible. So we walk you through all of this. Here's a nice checklist that Karina put together that again, it sort of reflects that pyramid that you can kind of, your core competency checklist. So this helps you enable you to know your readiness for your job search. And when you come into my office, I can say, Steve, I want to look at this job here. Okay, how much of this have you done? How ready are you? So finally, a couple of highlights from what you would do in the early stages when we out the door. We go over the platforms with you, walk you through those platforms, small group discussions. So I found this is very effective in the first term, kind of having you sign up for small groups around 20 people and sort of do these round table career discussions. You share your career goals, get to know each other, get to know your classmates, ask career questions, sort of like a mini group coaching session, enables me to get to know you. So we do that in the first term. We also go over all the assessment tools. Sorry that I put those dates in there. That actually should change back because we're back on the May schedule for starting. So never mind that. But we'll go through the assessment tools and the platforms. We'll do the Designing Your Life workshop. That generally happens around December. Career planning and strategy is part of Career Day. Networking, branding, we do that as part of Career Day. LinkedIn strategy, informational interviews and outreach, alumni career transition, career functions, and we have one coming up next week for our current first year class. WEMBA Work Web, that's a new program we came up with during the pandemic where students, it's all student run, student driven, where students come up and do short presentations about their expertise, and it's just a great way, bi-coastal, virtual, for students to get to know one another and their expertise. This could easily be done live as well within, a certain, on a class weekend. In fact, we did those as a part of the Ignite sessions that we did a couple years ago that morphed into WorkWeb. So again, it's sort of a structured student-to-student networking session. Executive speakers ongoing. So we try to do a speaker a term, high-profile speakers that are Wharton alum, COOs, CEOs, VCs, etc. So that's just kind of an opening on what to expect when you get started. So how to get the most out of this partnership? first of all, you want to take ownership, and like I said earlier, you know, at the end, it's an individual journey, and you have to own it. I say think like an entrepreneur, and why do I say that? Is that, you know, your venture is you, and so you want to be scrappy, you want to be resourceful, you want to be thinking about opportunities, you want to be creative, and so think very much like an entrepreneur. Treat your career as its own enterprise venture. It's not about getting the job, it's about building a network, and that's going to lead to the job. Build the relationships with your classmates are vital, absolutely vital in achieving these things. So to the extent that you have a great reputation in your class, people know what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, know what you're good at, know your superpowers, they can help you all the more. Embrace the necessity of having that network. A lot of people come into the program having never really valued that or been in jobs where they didn't have a network. And so working on building that is going to be vital. Introspection and self-assessment, you know, knowing yourself, knowing your superpowers, but also knowing your weaknesses, knowing those gaps, and being willing to work on developing those, because it's going to catch up. You know, you're going to have the whole package. Become an expert on your target ecosystem. So, you know, when people say, hey, I want to do strategy, hey, I want to be a venture capitalist, hey, I want to do M&A, what does all that mean? Who are the players? What are their backgrounds, and what companies? Where does it happen? What do the deals look like? You want to become an expert. You're going to need to be able to achieve this. And you got to hustle. Nothing's really going to come to you. I imagine you chose Wharton because that's your nature. So absolutely, that's not going to change. You want to hustle here. Focus on activity, not results. The results will happen if the activity is right. You know, want to be consistent. So, you know, what I find is sometimes they're really busy, active, and then they fall off the ledge. Life happens, and then they come back and start over. So to the extent you can be sort of consistent all the way through, you keep the forward momentum. Let go of entitlement. You know, yeah, you've achieved a lot by being here, and you probably achieved a lot in your career to get here. But again, you're resetting the clock basically. You have to be willing to start over in many cases, and let go of the entitlement. Be strategic about your contacts. So you know which contacts, what do they mean? All contacts are valuable, but you know, being really strategic about leveraging them, and where does that next contact take you? Some good books to read: Give and Take by Professor Adam Grant, Working Identity by Herminia Ibarra, and Designing Your Life. And those are some of the books. You can see we like our books. Finally, I'm going to end with what do the numbers look like in terms of the transition? So, you know, this is San Francisco. I think the numbers are a little different in Philly, but 65 to 70% of the WEMBAs, you know, make changes by graduation. And again, that's a promotion. That can be there's many different flavors of change. Most of that change happens toward the end in terms 5 and term 6. So there's a buildup along the way. They learn a lot along the way. They learn a few things, and then as you get closer to graduation, you know, sort of become more attractive to employers because you're kind of coming to the end of your program. You know, just in doing some sample studies, I found that roughly about 90% of our students will make changes within a year after graduation. So if you don't make a change at graduation, by no means is it all over. You know, people make moves, you know, post-graduation for sure. Factors for people that don't make the changes, maybe they haven't figured out the right track. Maybe they don't want to make a change while they're here, and that's perfectly fine. Hard to find the time to invest in all this. Maybe they didn't really attend a lot of the career programs and take the best advantage of career support. So I would encourage all of you to do that if you get into the program. And many didn't establish that foundational strategy that I talked about. Also, making adjustments to your transition. You know, we start out with goals, but we got to make adjustments as more data comes in, as we learn a little bit more about ourselves. But if you can make the adjustments, you'll find success. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And I can take any final questions if they're out there.
Oh, yeah, lots of questions rolling in, Steve. One in particular, all these great services available. How many of these are available after graduation?
I always get that question. We have an alumni career team here to support you. And I wouldn't say that their program mirrors our program. but they have a lot of different types of resources on their own. And of course, they're very, very good, along with external affairs, at exposing you to a very robust alumni network. So, you know, that's really going to be key. And you do get 4 coaching sessions with the alumni team post-graduation. So services don't end. They will look a little different, but it's not like we, you know, put you out on the on the sidewalk. Any?
Yep, we have plenty more questions here. The question is basically what happens on the Philly campus versus the San Francisco campus. Since you're the director in San Francisco, how many of these offerings happen in Philadelphia as well? And then of course the full-time MBA recruiting happens on the Philadelphia campus. What's the sort of leveraging of that can go on in any WEMBA cohort?
Sure. Well, to Karina's point, one of the positives that came out of the pandemic is that when we went virtual, we did pretty much everything we did, you know, collaboratively. So all of our students got pretty much the same programming. And there's core programs that stay the same, right? So if you look at career days, the content within career day is the same. Career conversations, the same. A lot of the same stuff. Then what we do is, you know, each career director is going to look at their student population and might have unique programs. For example, in Philadelphia, you know, traditionally there's a little bit more interest in, say, healthcare, or there might be a little bit more interest in finance. So some of the programming may be skewed that direction. We're more tech heavy over here, so we do more stuff around technology. So I don't think either coast is going to miss out on anything. What we do is we have core programming that's in sync, and then we have ad hoc, you know, unique programming that speaks to our student population. And so no one really misses out. To the OCR question, you know, OCR for the time being is virtual, so you know, and that's been really helpful to my students that haven't had to get on a plane to fly to Philly. Certainly, if you're based in Philly, you're going to have an advantage because the live interviewing occurs, you know, on campus. And so in the past, it's been, you know, hard for my students to kind of, you know, take the time off and get on a plane and go. So it's a little bit more. It's been easier for them for the West Coast students now that we're virtual. I imagine eventually we'll get back to doing it live, and in which case my West Coast students are going to have to get back on a plane if they want to do on campus for free. Any other questions?
Looking through, a lot of them were on that alumni topic.
I have one out here. Diane, I could jump in on this one. Steve, could you give an example of someone who really benefited from career management and what made them successful?
Wow, that would take all night. There are tons. There are tons. I'm trying to think of a good one. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, like, you know, basically, when is the best time to engage and how?
Well,
to really take advantage of like your services to be successful.
Okay, so that's a 2-part. Is that the same question? Or are you adding another question?
Okay, well, make it 2 questions then.
Okay. All right. So an example of someone that benefited from it. Yeah, let's take somebody. I'll give you an example of a student. He was a pretty well thought of leader at Amazon, and he ran he was like number 2 in a certain business unit, a very popular product at Amazon. And he was more on the technology side of the house, and he was getting his MBA, and you know, he started working with me early, and he was trying to accomplish a few things like, what is the best way for me to, you know, be more strategic in my role? Also, I've been part of this large company, and does it make sense for me to go to a growth company at this stage, and what does all that look like? So we looked at all those options for him, and we came up with a really great strategy where he was in exploring the potential, the possibility of starting his own venture. He was exploring, he was connecting with venture capitalists, not only thinking about, he wasn't necessarily as interested in being an investor, but he was connecting with them with the opportunities that, what would it look like to join a growth company, one of their portfolio companies, and in so doing, built some very strong relationships with VCs, and also, learn more about, being an entrepreneur. And he also then explored, okay, what would leveraging my technology leadership background combined with my MBA and looking at what would strategy look like. And, he went through a good 6-month exploratory process where he'd come back and sit down with me and say, I met this VC, learned this. I met this founder in our network and learned this. I met this senior VP, GM at a major tech company and learned this. Combined with the product areas, and what it finally came out with is he ended up joining another very strong consumer tech company that was actually a publicly traded company, and he ended up running a business unit, and he runs innovation products for this company, and it turned out that that was the right fit for him. So what's the takeaway? The takeaway is a lot of front end self-assessment, exploration, built the network, learned from the network, recalibrated his brand, identified the target, and was able to execute the target once he knew where he was going, and he's very successful. So hopefully that's a good story. In terms of timing, when to get started, in general, I like to do that small group stuff in your first term and not throw too much at you from a programming standpoint, because it's very important in the first term for you to get your academic sea legs. It's a very challenging program. A lot comes at you in that first term. It's very important that you establish yourself there. So I don't like to over-career program in that first term, but I do like to kind of set the table. And then in term 2, we dive right into one-on-one coaching, resources, and start the career plan. So the short answer is I think term 2 is a great time to sort of dive in. Term 1 might be a great time to sort of familiarize yourself with the career process, get to know your classmates, get to know the landscape, sort of figure out your job match with WEMBA, and then so you're ready to dive in earnest in term 2. So hopefully I answered those 2 questions.
Yeah. Can I add on to, I think what we've seen that makes students really pretty successful is they show up in terms of whatever career programming happens. I think something that if you're going to be in this program, if you get accepted in this program, you're really going to have to think about is time management skills. And I believe that that's usually one of the questions, or it has been in the past for the application into WEMBA. But it's really important that, the students take initiative and become partners with us in their career. And so part of the battle is just finding the time to dedicate to come to the programming. I think every year we have like over 100 hours worth of programming for each year. So there's things for people to do and take part of. So just making sure the students are making the time to at least attend 1 or 2 things a month, and definitely our core programming days and activities, which are labeled, to begin that conversation and begin thinking about it. Because I think sometimes what happens is there's just obviously a lot of things you're juggling: class, personal life, families, your jobs, obviously, that sometimes career can kind of get swept under the rug a little bit. So I think if that's a serious reason why you might, be attending this program, you really kind of want to think long and hard about how are you going to plan and use your time management skills wisely to also include career into that equation.
Thanks, Karina.
Yes, absolutely. Steve, do you have any parting words of advice for all these folks on the line?
I would say, certainly if you get into Wharton WEMBA, it could definitely be a life-changing experience. But I also think that what I would encourage you to do is not to come into this program thinking that I have to make this, this incredible move. for this to be worthwhile. Think of it in pieces, just the beginning. Actually, when you graduate, it's just the beginning of this new chapter. And if you look at it more holistically, like look at the knowledge that I gained, look at the network that I've built, look at all this exposure, and then if I work with a career team, I've got this strategy and plan on how to implement all these things. And if you look at it as a package, it really opens up. Then I think that's really the life-changing aspect of it that's gonna move you down the road. So the key takeaway is don't think about things here transactionally, absorb everything, enjoy it. And I think that's another thing that Karina talked about is because there's so much coming at you all the time, it's kind of hard to stop and smell the roses. And I think the students that are able to do that and have that perspective have a much more, a much more joyous experience.
Absolutely. Thank you. And yeah, this was fantastic. We are so grateful, Steve, Karina, for your time. And you know, Steve, since you have made your time here tonight, and I want to give a shout out to the audience to say thanks for joining us. And if you have questions about the admissions process or about career management as you're a prospective student, come to me, come to Diane, and ask those questions, or any member of our team. I think there's a great summary comment in the chat, and it says the comprehensiveness of all of this programming is incredible. This is amazing. And I want you all to know that we asked Steve and Karina to please give an overview of career management for this admissions topic. So just know this is just the surface. We do hope that you'll apply to Wharton. Thank you all very much for your night. Have a good one.
Thanks, Barbara. Thanks, Diane. Thanks, team. Have a great
day. See you guys.
Bye.